Hey guys, welcome back. So if you can believe it, we have finally made it to the end of 2020. Now, I don't know about you, but I feel like this year has both been the longest year in history, and I'm also feeling like just yesterday was February. But you know, I said that 2020 was going to be memorable like a lot of people, and it definitely delivered. So that said, today I want to talk to you guys all about my 5-star reads of 2020. There have been a lot of crazy things that have happened this past year, and I want to focus on the good. And by good, I mean all of the books that I read that I absolutely adored, that I rated 5 stars basically. So at the time that I am filming this video, I still haven't technically completed all of my reading for December. I still have about a week or so left, so I don't want to say my total number just yet. However, I do at least want to talk about my 5-star reads so far because I feel like I have gone far enough in the year to feel comfortable saying that I've pretty much probably hit my limit of 5-star reads. And, you know, again, I just want to talk about all of the books that I have loved this past year, kind of take a trip down memory lane. So go ahead and join me as I talk about all of the books that I read and loved this year. Okay, so before I dive into the actual books, let's talk stats because, again, at the time of filming this video, I have read and rated 14 5-star reads, which to be honest is not that bad. I probably should have looked at my video last year or last year's numbers just to see how they stack up, but I just realized that and I'm too lazy to go look. But regardless, I'd say more than 10 5-star reads in a year is not bad at all. That's actually pretty good. And so yeah, I guess let's kind of talk about the books themselves. I'm not going to go in any kind of particular order because again, they're all 5 stars. So let's jump right in with the first 2, which I'm kind of going to group together because they're part of the series, and that is A Court of Mist and Fury and A Court of Wings and Ruins, which are the 2nd and 3rd book respectively in the Sarah J. Maas ACOTAR series. Gosh, talk about 2020 feeling like forever because I feel as if I read these books years ago when in actuality I only read them back late January, I believe. However, I still remember them like yesterday in terms of the plot, of course, and the way that they make me feel because I love these books so much. Now, it's really interesting because when it comes to my 5-star reads, I kind of have like different types of 5-star reads, if that kind of makes any sense. And these particular books were 5-star reads that really left an emotional impact on me to where to this day I can quote the story and the plot beat by beat what happened because it just sat with me days, weeks probably after I read both of these books. I'm not going to tell you what the story is about because, again, it's an older fantasy series that's wildly popular, but I finally jumped on that train when I read it back in January because I was at the used bookstore and I figured I would finally check out a really popular series because I didn't have any idea what I wanted to read. And if I remember correctly, it was actually between this and another popular YA series. It could have been, I think it was the Cassandra Clare Shadowhunter series, but I ended up choosing this one because it was less commitment. There's only 3, 4, almost 5 books now, rather than like, I don't know, how many are in the Shadowhunter series? Like 1,000 if you're counting all the spin-offs. But anyway, yes, I love this book or these books so much. I stayed up well into the night, past midnight, reading these. Again, I liked the first one. I adored the 3rd one, and I was obsessed with the 2nd one. And to this day, like, I probably will reread the 2nd one, which is saying a lot because I never reread books. Okay, next let's talk about, I guess, a particular author that I have 5-star reads from. I'm kind of jumping around the place how I want to categorize this video, so kind of bear with me, but I want to talk about Whitney G, the author, and her books that I rated 5 stars. I have talked about her countless times on this channel if you've been around for a while, and that was because she was my basically breakout author, new to me of 2020. Obviously she's been out longer than that, but I first discovered her again back in January. I fell head over heels with her stories. So really quick, I have a couple 5-star reads from her. I've got my list over here. First we have 30 Day Boyfriend, then we have Can I Come Over, and then lastly we have King of Lies, which is actually part of her series called Empire of Lies. Now technically I guess I could have rated King of Lies as a series as a whole since it is a serial, but King of Lies is actually my favorite book out of all of them, so there you have it. But basically with King of Lies, it's kind of like an anti-hero story where we get the beginning of the story told from the hero's point of view, where he flat out tells you that he is not a hero. Do not expect any kind of happily ever after from him. He is a bad guy. He is no good. Well, as we all know, or as we expect, we don't think that that's actually going to be true, because he ends up meeting a woman who turns out to be the heroine, and the two of them kind of forge a relationship. However, he keeps telling her that he is not a good guy. He's no good for her, and she doesn't believe him because his actions say otherwise. He's just such a sweet guy. Well, you know, let's just say that he ends up proving his point. He is not a good guy. I believe, I think it's at the end of the first book or maybe at the second book, he kidnaps her. I don't want to say why or how or kind of give anything like that away, but basically we see him turn into a villain later on in the story, and of course as we read along we kind of see his intentions and why and all of that. But it was such an interesting read, partially because of that anti-hero slash villain point of view, and then also mainly just plain the storyline. It was so interesting to me, especially for a romance. I had never read that kind of plot line before, and so it's for that reason why I gave the first book at least 5 stars, though if I'm being honest, the second and third book have 4 stars. So really, if you want to read the series in general, you can't go wrong because I absolutely adored it. Now, as for her other 2 books, 30 Day Boyfriend and Can I Come Over, these are both romance novellas that I absolutely adored. Just to kind of run down the plot really quickly, 30 Day Boyfriend is kind of your more traditional trope where it is a office romance slash enemies to lovers, because we have a woman who works for this really demanding kind of asshole of a guy, and she really wants to leave the company, and he agrees that he will let her out of her contract if she agrees to pretend to be with him for 30 days. Now, because they have like this enemies to lovers situation, you know that there is animosity going on, and the chemistry in that is just so good. Now, if we flip it and talk about Can I Come Over, that's actually a friends to lovers series. This one is really interesting because they are virtual friends to start off with, because we have a heroine who is a romance author, and so she gets help from her kind of like online male friend that she has made, who helps her kind of work through all of the plot issues as she's writing, and she's been in a writing rut, unable to write this specific sex scene where he offers to give her tips and help her write the scene, and so that ends up taking their relationship to the next level, and they agree to meet. However, once they meet, oh my goodness, shocker. I'll just leave it at that, but it's a little bit of taboo, a lot unexpected, and again, 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. Okay, I want to talk about another series. This one I loved so much, I gave all 4 books 5 stars. This one, I guess you can technically say it's also a serial. You could read them separately, but it wouldn't make any sense, and that is the MindF series by St. Abby. Again, it took me a long time to realize that the author's name spelled out Stabby, which was kind of like a ha-ha Easter egg, but I actually did a video about this titled I Read a Serial Killer Romance, and basically that's exactly what it is. It is a romance in which one of the characters is a serial killer and the other character is a criminal profiler hunting them down. And I mean, talk about originality. I personally had never read a romance in which the hero-heroine couple basically had that kind of battle and were in these different fields to kind of go against each other. So I don't even know really what I would categorize this as, because it wasn't technically enemies to lovers, and obviously it wasn't friends to lovers. But at the same time, it was super interesting. And as someone who loves, you know, dark thrillers or, you know, Criminal Minds, a TV show, plus romance, this was the perfect blend. I thought that it was very fast paced. It was extremely gory. So just a heads up going in, if this is something that sounds interesting to you, the author holds nothing back in terms of revealing all of the nitty gritty details, both in the bedroom and outside, which, to be honest, is something that I appreciated. Again, I like my fiction with darker tones, and so I appreciated the fact that she didn't shy back from it. But yeah, I ended up rating, like I said, all 4 of these installments 5 stars because it was just so original and so compelling. So the next 2 books that I want to talk about are in a category of their own because they are historical romance. Now, this year was the first year actually that I read my first ever historical romance novel. It had been a long time coming, if I'm being honest, but really what had held me back in the past was fear that I necessarily wasn't going to understand the language and the settings, just because it's a little bit more difficult for me to picture things in that time period since I'm not familiar with it. I hadn't really seen it just based on the TV shows that I had watched. But rest assured, all of that kind of flew out of the window with these 2 books. The first book that I want to talk about is When a Scot Ties a Knot. That was actually the first ever historical romance book that I read. So this one is super charming because it stars a Scotsman who returns home from war, and he actually goes to the house or the land of this woman who has been writing him for years on end. But the tricky part of it is that the woman who has been writing him didn't actually think that he existed. She actually made this person up just to get her family off of her back years ago, and it was just a lie that snowballed. So she ends up writing these fake letters, not thinking that they're going to anybody, but in fact they are going to this guy who, again, once he returns home from war, him and his buddies basically show up on her doorstep and he's like, okay, I'm here, let's get married. Because for all intents and purposes, they have been engaged all this time. So I thought this one was so charming and it was hilarious as well. There were tons of humorous moments, which I was not at all expecting, just because, you know, again, I had this notion about what historical romances were and I wasn't expecting any kind of humor, but Tessa Dare totally proved me wrong. There's this one particular scene in general. She has this, oh my goodness, I don't remember what type of animal it was. It's not a lizard, but anyway, she has this untraditional kind of pet that she has because she likes to study animals, and it gets loose in the house, and it's hilarious because you have this big brawling Scotsman and all of his comrades like on their hands and knees trying to hunt for this creature in the house because they know how much it means to her. And again, it was just so sweet. And if you have never read historical romances or you're still a newbie like I am, definitely check this one out. I totally see now why she is like the queen of historical romances, and at the very least like the perfect author to get an introduction to if you are new to historical romances. Okay, so let's talk about the other historical romance, which is called The Beast of Beswick. I did a video about this one too because after reading it, I became obsessed with Beauty and the Beast retellings, because that's essentially what this one is, a Beauty and the Beast retelling, in the sense to where you have this man who is rich, kind of disfigured, who's cranky and lives alone, and this woman who basically infiltrates his life and moves in. She demands to be like his maid or something because she knows that her and her sister are basically going to be married off or sold off to this horrible man, and she doesn't want that to happen. So the only way that she can do that is if she kind of gets under the protection of this even worse, more powerful man. Now, obviously, as they spend more time together, she sees his more loving and kind side, and that in turn makes him open up because she treats him like a regular person and isn't afraid of his looks and his horrible personality, because again, he does try and push her away, you know, by being rude and mean and everything like that. But oh my goodness, this book was so good. The imagery in it, the descriptions were just spot on. And he lives in this very lavish castle that was very high tech for its time, and I just loved reading those rich descriptions. I know that there's this one part of the house that's kind of like this glass enclosed pool, which for the time back then was unheard of, one of a kind, and so it was very interesting to read about that, as well as other parts in the castle. And the cover itself is beautiful. It's like this rich red, and so again, automatically it stands out, but the story itself also stands out because it's just such a good Beauty and the Beast retelling. And like I said, it made me obsessed with them afterwards. I'm pretty sure I've got like 2 or 3 historical romance Beauty and the Beast retellings sitting on my shelf because simply I could not get enough of them based on this book. Oh, okay, so the next 2 that I want to talk about are part of the Babysitters Club series. It's actually the first 2 books. I guess technically you can count these as rereads, but I have not read these books in like more than 20 years. But I read it this past summer because I knew that the Babysitters Club series was coming out to Netflix, and I wanted to do a little like trip down childhood memory lane. So I bought a box set, I believe, of the first 5 or 6, and I read them, and the first 2 books got 5 stars for me. Kristy's Big Idea and Claudia and the Phantom Phone Call, because to this day, they still hold up, which I gotta be honest, I was super surprised about. But these books brought back so many of the feels, and it just readied me to watch the show, which, side note, also was excellent, and I highly suggest you watch it if you haven't yet, because it does such a good job not only staying true to the original stories but also modernizing it, which is very hard to do if I'm being honest. But anyway, yes, these books were so wonderfully written. I believe even kids today could still stand to read and appreciate them, and I had to really sit back and think about the book and make sure that I wasn't giving them 5 stars simply because of the nostalgia, which again is something that is, you know, not necessarily anything wrong with that. But even pushing nostalgia aside, these books are very well written. They have such wonderful lessons learned without kind of pushing anything down your throat, and I enjoy them today just as much as I did back when I was a young girl. And I love them so much, and it's definitely a series that I would hand down to children because, again, they are so well written that, you know, honestly, it's something that any generation could like and appreciate, which I love so much. Okay, so this next one is Conspiracy in Death, which is actually part of J.D. Robb's In Death series. I know you guys have heard me talk about these. If you have seen any of my wrap-ups, I've at least talked about one of these books because I've been doing the readathon all year long and have read a minimum of one of these books every month. And this was the first time I've ever actually given one of the books in the installment 5 stars. Now, that's not to say that the series isn't good, obviously, because I've been binging through it. But this particular story was so stand out that it really just got to me. So if for some reason you haven't seen me talk about these books before, just a really quick rundown about the series. It stars a police lieutenant named Eve Dallas, and you kind of follow her along in every book as she solves different cases, and along with that you have kind of the side characters that contribute to the story. So for example, you've got Peabody, which is her aide or her kind of right hand woman that she works with, and then you've got the ever illustrious Rourke, who is her dark and handsome husband, who plays a major role, not just because he's her husband obviously, but he chips in a lot of the time in helping her solve the cases. But this particular story I absolutely loved because we saw the most vulnerability in Eve that we had seen in the series thus far. Now, Eve's character is known as being a tough, no-nonsense, hard ass. You know, she doesn't show any weakness. She literally can get hurt and want to be out in the field the next day. She's just impermeable, and that goes for both her exterior and her personality. But in this story, we get a crack in her armor, which I really appreciated, because sometimes having a really tough character, especially something that spans, you know, dozens of books, can get a little bit old because they just seem like perfect and can do no wrong. And this story came along at the perfect time in the series because we see that Eve does have flaws and she does need help, and seeing her friends and family and coworker rally around her during her time of need, so to speak, was so incredibly touching. And I feel like it was even sweeter because up until this point we had seen her being this badass cop, and so when she finally needs help, you know, the people in her life basically are there to pitch in and help her, which I just love so much. I'm pretty sure I might have teared up reading this story just because, again, kind of seeing Eve's vulnerability, but I absolutely adored it. The series in general, I love, and I do plan on continuing it in 2021, basically until I've caught up to the series. But this book in particular, I had to give 5 stars because it left an emotional impact as well as an entertaining one. And I just, I couldn't get it out of my head. Okay, so last up, maybe best for last. You know, I don't know if that's fair to say because technically I gave all of these books 5 stars, but maybe the book that I can gush about the most, if that makes any sense, and that is Beach Read. Now, talk about book hangover. When I read this a few months back, I was shook. Do the kids still say that? I don't know. But I could not get over it. I love this book so hard, so much so that immediately after I read it, I sent my friend a copy because I needed her to read it. Not only because I thought that she would like it, but because I needed to talk about it with somebody. It was so freaking good. I don't even know what to say about this book that I haven't already gushed about in some wrap up or the other, but the plot of it basically is a woman goes to her recently deceased father's beach house that she inherited just to kind of get away because she's got writer's block, and she hopes that by kind of holing up in this place away from home, she'd be able to push through her writer's block and submit her book on time. Well, when she gets there, her next door neighbor happens to also be a writer, and one in fact that she knows kind of because they went to school together, and they agree to write each other's genres just to kind of switch up their brain and help them push past their respective writing blocks. I believe he does like either nonfiction or kind of darker fiction, and again, she's a romance author. Plot aside, because let's be honest, that's not necessarily a super original plot, the author's voice is one of the best voices I have ever read when it comes to I guess women's fiction or contemporary romance, because it's just stand out. The dialogue itself is so sharp. I really enjoyed the dialogue, especially between the heroine and one of her girlfriends. I swear to God, it sounds like conversations that I have had in the past with my own friends, and I really appreciated that. I loved how she didn't shy away from the depressing or dark topics because the heroine was going through a really tough time, and even though this is a romance, you know, she still leaned into the fact that she was struggling, which I really liked. And, you know, obviously there's romance involved with her neighbor, and I liked the pacing of it. You know, it wasn't kind of, you know, other romances where they might have a meet cute and all of these cutesy moments. But you kind of just see their relationship unfold. Not necessarily one from friends to lovers, but just a relationship in general with two people clearly struggling with their own personal demons, just trying to get back to normal in their own lives, and, you know, using each other as a way to navigate that. Oh, God, it's so good. What's ironic about it, though, is that even though it's called Beach Read, it is not a beach read. This book was a lot heavier than I was expecting. I was sobbing multiple times. Like, I, even to this day, can specifically remember it was almost 1 o'clock in the morning and I got into this part with the letters. That's all I'll say. And as I started reading and flipping the pages, like, I could barely keep reading because my vision was blurred because I was crying so hard. And I'm pretty sure I had a headache the next day from crying and reading, and in the best kind of way. I tell you, I had a book hangover, and it reminded me like how impactful certain books are when you read them. And I just really love that feeling because, you know, you can read a book and kind of move on and that's it, and it's just entertainment value. But then every once in a while, you'll read a book that's so emotional and so raw and it leaves you gutted, and you're just like, I can see those characters. I am feeling what they're going through, and it's reasons like that where I'm so glad that I'm a reader, because like being in that headspace, it's the best. Okay, so there you have it. Those are my 5-star reads of 2020. I could probably go on and gush about them even longer if I'm being honest, because the reason that they're 5 stars is because I love them and I want to keep talking about them. But for the sake of the video, I'm going to wrap it up here. So let me know in the comments if you've read any of these, but more specifically what your 5-star reads of 2020 are. I'm sure, you know, you're glad that the year is over like many of us, but at the same time, it was fun to look back on, again, something good that happened. All of the books that I read that I really liked. You know, this year has had a lot of ups and downs, and I have had some reading slumps, so it was really fun to go back and revisit all of the books that I love this year, because that just kind of gets me excited to keep reading and all of the upcoming books in 2021. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe, and in the meantime, I'll talk to you guys later. Happy holidays. Bye.